Have you ever felt like you notice things others don't? Subtle shifts in mood, hidden tensions, or emotions lurking just beneath the surface? Some people live with an extraordinary perception that allows them to see what most cannot. Carl Jung called this kind of awareness both a gift and a curse. In his work, he observed individuals whose perception of the human psyche was so finely tuned that it often left them isolated, exhausted, and misunderstood. Today, we explore Jung's most dangerous discovery: the rare ability to perceive the unconscious lives of others, and why it can either destroy or elevate those who possess it. In his private notes, Jung described patients who exhibited what he called differentiated perception. These were people who could read micro-expressions, sense emotions before they were expressed, and intuit psychological patterns that escaped everyone else. They could detect deception immediately, sense unspoken tensions in a room, and understand the hidden dynamics of relationships with uncanny clarity. But Jung noticed something troubling. These individuals didn't just see more, they suffered more. They became isolated, fatigued, and often struggled to maintain ordinary relationships. Their gift of perception came with a profound psychological cost. One of Jung's early patients, whom he saw in 1913, embodied this rare capacity. She was introverted, deeply intuitive, and capable of sensing the invisible currents of emotion around her. Jung wrote that she could enter a room and immediately understand the unspoken conflicts, hidden resentments, and secret anxieties of everyone present. Yet, her perception created tension. She found casual conversation unbearable because she could see through every social mask. Friendships were difficult because people felt exposed in her presence. Jobs were impossible because her awareness disrupted unspoken social agreements. Jung realized that he was not observing pathology, but the consequences of consciousness operating beyond ordinary human limits. Jung also noted a darker side to this ability. When someone perceives so much, they become a mirror for the shadows of others. People unconsciously project their own fears, denials, and weaknesses onto the perceptive individual. Suddenly, the observer becomes the target of criticism, blame, or even hostility, simply for reflecting truths others cannot face. He called this the problem of the superior function. The very strength that allowed these individuals to see deeply also set them apart, creating isolation and social tension. Jung explained that the danger was not in perception itself, but in the psychic vulnerability it produced. Through his clinical observations, Jung identified 4 primary ways that highly perceptive, introverted, intuitive process unconscious content. Some individuals absorb the feelings of others into their own experience. They feel joy, sadness, and anxiety as if it were their own. Jung described them as living in perpetual emotional contagion, experiencing the unlived emotions of everyone around them. Others channel perception into predicting outcomes and recognizing patterns. They can foresee conflicts, breakdowns, or crises, not through rational deduction, but by reading unconscious cues. Jung wrote that these individuals understand consequences before they occur, often without being able to explain how. Some sense psychological realities through physical cues. They notice bodily tension, detect illness, or feel emotional distress manifest physically before anyone else does. Jung observed that they serve as early warning systems for both emotional and physical turmoil. The rarest and most overwhelmed type perceives vast unconscious currents without a clear framework for processing them. Jung wrote that they experience a constant flood of impressions, leaving them vulnerable to emotional and psychic overwhelm. Jung saw 3 central dangers in these highly perceptive individuals. By noticing what others unconsciously agree to ignore, They challenge the collective social fabric. Families, workplaces, and societies rely on certain unspoken illusions to maintain cohesion. Those who see too clearly inadvertently destabilize these structures simply by existing authentically. Superior perception often separates the individual from those around them. Jung described this as existential isolation, being aware of realities that others cannot or will not perceive. They live in a parallel psychological space, misunderstood and unseen. Finally, absorbing the unconscious contents of others without boundaries risks dissolving one's own identity. Jung termed this participation mystique, a state in which the individual becomes enmeshed in collective psychological material, losing touch with their authentic self. Jung believed that this rare ability could be a source of profound transformation, but only through careful integration. He outlined 3 key phases. The first step is distinguishing between one's own feelings and those absorbed from others. This requires daily reflection and solitude, allowing the mind to settle and the self to reassert clarity. Perceptive individuals must also confront their own hidden aspects: anger, envy, fear, to reduce the projection of shadows from others. Jung emphasized that the capacity to see the darkness in others comes from confronting it within oneself. Shadow integration means acknowledging that you contain every human quality you observe in others. This doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you complete. Finally, one must develop the ability to engage with others' unconscious states without being overwhelmed. This means creating psychological containers, holding impressions temporarily while maintaining a clear boundary between self and environment. Jung observed the contrast between those who failed and those who succeeded. Nietzsche, with his extraordinary insight, became consumed by his perceptions, ultimately isolating himself and experiencing psychological collapse. Meister Eckhart, on the other hand, integrated his mystical intuition, transforming awareness into wisdom and compassionate action. Jung's most dangerous discovery reminds us that seeing too clearly is both a blessing and a burden. Awareness without integration can isolate, exhaust, and even dissolve the self. But with careful attention, reflection, and courage, superior perception becomes a bridge, connecting individual consciousness with the hidden truths of the world and offering the possibility of extraordinary transformation.